This is the thinker pose. You know the thinker pose? That's what I'm doing now. I'm thinking. And I'm thinking a lot about thinking. I shoot these videos and I ask you guys to think about things. And I've been thinking about the whole concept of actually thinking versus having thoughts. And, you know, there are a number of thoughts that pass through your mind all the time. When we're interacting with the world around us, thoughts are unavoidable. A thought is a noun, so it's a thing. Whereas thinking is a verb, and it's what you do to create thoughts. So I want to talk a little bit today about having thoughts versus real thinking, because some of the thoughts engage us more than the other thoughts do, and this engagement, or the process of engagement, is actually called thinking. We have a lot of prejudices. If I ask you a question, you may automatically have a thought about that question, and usually the thought is based on something from the past, some experience that you've had, something that you think you already know. So you might say to me, if I asked you a question, let me think about it, but are you really thinking about it? Do you actually think about it, or do you just have thoughts about things? And are those thoughts even yours? Or are they thoughts that were transferred onto you by maybe your parents or your circle of influence or your friends or the people that you hang around with? You know, there's a great quote. I'm actually going to tell you from he was a former professor of English at Yale. And he has this great concept. And what he said is that I find for myself that my first thought is never my best thought. My first thought is always someone else's. It's always what I've already heard about the subject, always the conventional wisdom. It's only by concentrating, sticking to the question, being patient, letting all the parts of my mind come into play, that I arrive at an original idea. By giving my brain a chance to make associations, draw connections, take me by surprise. And often even that idea doesn't turn out to be very good. I need time to think about it too, to make mistakes and recognize them, to make false starts and correct them, to outlast my impulses, to defeat my desire, to declare the job done and move on to the next thing. So what is that? I want to introduce you to a concept called bracketing. Now, bracketing is actually a philosophical phenomenon. So bracketing is a charmingly simple term grounded in a profoundly complex concept. And at its core, bracketing is a scientific process where a researcher suspends his or her beliefs or biases or assumptions or theories or previous experience about something to see and describe the essence of a specific phenomenon. So what does that look like when it comes to thought? We say that we think about things, but when ideas are presented to us, what about if we considered that what we're thinking about are not thoughts, are not thinking, but are actually just thoughts about that thing, things that we already know, things that we maybe already believe, or that we have biases about, or assumptions. You can think of a category of people. Maybe if I say teenager to you, that might automatically induce some kind of a feeling or concept or belief about the person in front of you that you don't even know. So what about if you bracketed what you think you know about things or about people or about a concept? In other words, nobody's going to take your opinions. I can guarantee you that. You're probably most of the time can keep those for yourself, because nobody else is really interested in those, if you know what I mean. And so imagine if you took whatever your opinions were, whatever your ideas, your concepts, your beliefs, your assumptions, your theories, your previous experience about something, and you took that and you bracketed it, like almost, if you can imagine a shelf that you would take and you would put things, or they have brackets that hold the shelf, and you would put things on that shelf. What then would be available? Could you now actually be open to think? Actually take the time, stick to the question, be patient, let all the parts of your mind come into play. then maybe you would actually have an original thought about that. And then you're really thinking about something. You know, when you're asked a trivial question, for example, what's 1 + 1? You think about the answer, you say you think about the answer, but we really don't think about the answer. We go back to that little filing cabinet in your brain that already knows everything. And maybe now's the time when you can think about somebody that you know who already knows everything and how wonderful that person is to be around, because I know a couple of people like that. But if you're presented with a challenge or an obstacle and you have to think, like you have to think about it, that process doesn't work. Going back to what you already know is not going to give you anything other than what you already have. Remember the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. The point is, if you say you're going to think about it, then do that. Allow yourself the time to do that. People say nothing works unless you change your thoughts. I'm going to disagree with that. I actually think that nothing changes unless you change how you think. And if you change how you think, then maybe some of the thoughts you come up with will start to become a little bit more original and probably getting you to think on purpose. And thinking on purpose is how you get what you want. So now, think about that.